Good afternoon. I wish to call the Lee County Board of Commissioners to order on this Monday, March 6th of 2023. Thank you for everyone coming this evening. I always like to have individuals observing their government in action. So please stand with me as we go for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We need to add an additional item to the agenda. Put it under item number 8. After commissioners' comments, we will be going into closed session to address issues with our attorney. Any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have an approval for the agenda as amended?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion's been made to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Moving on, the next item is the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda?
I don't have a question on the consent agenda. I have no problem with it. I have got a couple of questions regarding the OSBM contracts. I'm interested in knowing some more about Harbor.
Would you like to pull it and we'll put it on the agenda?
I'll be fine.
Let's pull item number, hold on, I've got to find the title on that.
I think it's the first
2A.
one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the first one.
It's 2A.
2A, I'm sorry, I was looking at it. Item 2A, we'll go ahead and put that under old business for item
Agreed.
4D.
That's fine.
I think that's a good choice, seeing I've had enough phone calls from and emails regarding those items, and that way we can describe them publicly.
Correct. And also explain that that is not the county's money.
Correct, I agree.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Motion's been made to approve the consent agenda as amendment. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is public comments. I do have one individual signed up for public comments. Just a reminder, you have 3 minutes to discuss public comments. You can address the board. There will be no interaction between the board and the public commenter. And when you do approach the microphone, please state your name as well as your address for the record. And the first one is Gabrielle Saunders.
Gabrielle Saunders, 223B Wicker Street, Sanford, 27330. Good evening, Commissioners. I would first like to, as always, say thank you and introduce myself as the Director of Veteranation. I would first like to speak about the veteran organizations that are already servicing the veterans of Lee County. We have Lee County Veterans Council, who's comprised of veteran organizations that advocate for the greater good of veterans here in our area. We have the Marine Toys for Tots, who at minimum ensure that children of Lee County have a deserving Christmas regardless of their family financial burdens. Combat Sexual Assault, who provides services to veterans who have received or were involved with sexual assault issues during their time of service. And she provides free pro bono legal service to those veterans. And she's also located here in Lee County. I would like to mention, we have NC Works, the Veterans Department. We have CCCC, Veterans Upward Bound Program, and we have 2 veteran service officers already here in Lee County who service 4,000 veterans, and there's only 2 of them. Then we have ourselves, which is Veteranation. We have been here since 2019. The services we provide to the veterans here are not just for the homeless veterans, but any veteran who receives or needs services. Some of those services include supportive housing. We've been doing that for about 6 months now. Some of those services also include, we have a mobile shower, which we provide to anyone regardless of their situation. We've also helped veterans, several veterans in this community here apply for their VA compensation and receive VA compensation to include other benefits that they're entitled to. We have veterans who have had house fires who we were able to use and work with other organizations to help those veterans. There are already organizations here in Lee County that we are asking that at any point that you advocate for those that have been here, are servicing Lee County, and will remain here for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing on the agenda, under old business, the planning board recommendations for rezoning request on Valley Road. Mr. Lee?
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. I've been told to ask that prior to proceeding with the planning board recommendation for this item, the Commissioners should acknowledge for the record whether or not anyone has a conflict of interest regarding this proposed rezoning. Are there any?
Does anyone have a conflict of interest regarding this rezoning? Or we do not have anyone.
Thank you. Regarding the application by Thomas Beck to rezone 1 tract of land totaling 2.27 plus or minus acres on Valley Road from residential restricted R&R to residential agricultural RA to allow for the placement of a double-wide residence on the property, the planning board met on February 20th after the public hearing was held and voted unanimously to recommend that the Commissioners approve the proposed zoning map amendment. The board briefly discussed the current zoning designation and its location before concluding that the RA zoning district fit the Plan San Lee designation of countryside. Using this rationale, they deemed the request consistent with the long-range plan. And as a reminder, the Commissioners should make 2 votes regarding this matter. Sample motions are provided for your reference, and the board is always welcome to draft a unique motion if preferred. Also, the board may acknowledge that the zoning map amendment is not consistent with the Plan San Lee long-range plan, and still a vote to approve the request. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Lee? Seeing there are none, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve motion number 1 under vote 1 to begin with.
Motion's been made that the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the Plan San Lee long-range plan. Designation of countryside as residential agricultural is a desired zoning district, and single-family dwellings are permitted. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then we do need a second
I
motion.
offer motion, option number 1.
Motion's been made that the Board of Commissioners approve the proposed zoning map amendment because the site is appropriate for residential agricultural land use. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to item B, do you have that as well, Mr. Lee?
Yes, sir.
You going to stay with us all 3 times?
No, Ms. McNeil will be taking the text
Okay.
amendment. It's not everything. Same as last time, I need to ask if there are any conflicts prior to starting this item.
Are there any conflicts dealing with the Tramway Road Sally Nobling property rezoning? Seeing there's none, continue, sir.
Thank you. Regarding the application by Sally Nobling in requesting to rezone 2 parcels of land totaling 2.86 acres, addressed as 2721 Tramway Road from residential agricultural RA to light industrial LI, to allow for the expansion of an existing construction equipment sales and leasing business on the subject property. The planning board met on February 20th after the public hearing was held and voted unanimously to recommend that the Commissioners approve the proposed zoning map amendment. The board briefly discussed the current zoning designation and surrounding zoning, its location on Tramway Road, and existing improvements at the site. In making its decision, the board concluded that the request was inconsistent with Plan San Lee as light industrial is not a desired zoning district within the countryside land use area. Therefore, if the Board of Commissioners approves the zoning map amendment, the future land use map will be updated to better reflect the permitted industrial uses that would be allowed at the site in that case. As a reminder, the Commissioners should make 2 votes regarding this matter, and sample motions are provided. That concludes my staff report. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Lee?
I think my only question is, now, say that this business would choose to sell or whatever, and the business itself would change. Would the use of it come back up for a vote, or as long as it fell in the LI, it would just be?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's a general use rezoning, so any LI use could be put there once it's rezoned.
Okay.
Yes,
All right. And then I think there was only one gentleman that came and spoke, but he seemed relatively content after speaking with the land, or the owner.
I agree with that. I think
okay.
that's the perception I got.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Option 1.
Motion option 1, or is it option 2? I understand that it does not.
The way I wrote this, it can really be either option. Option 1 assigns Maker District as the
Okay.
future land use category, if you want
All
to
right.
make that designation.
We'll take option 1. Motion's been made to propose the zoning map amendment is consistent with the Plan San Lee long-range plan designation of Maker District rather than countryside, as the site is ideal for small-scale light industrial use. Any further questions, discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Well, we need the second one, right?
And we'll
Motion
need-
2, yeah, so I'll move to make a motion for option 1 to approve the proposed zoning map amendment because the site is appropriate for a light industrial land use for vote number 2.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Vorbeck that the Board of Commissioners approve the proposed zoning map amendment because the site is appropriate for light industrial land use. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioners.
Next item on the agenda is the Planning Board recommendation for a text amendment to the Lee County Unified Development Ordinance. And Amy, you've got it.
Good evening, Commissioners and staff. Prior to proceeding with consideration of the Planning Board recommendation, the Commissioners should once again acknowledge for the record whether or not anyone has a conflict of interest regarding the proposed UDO text amendment for mobile food vendors.
Does anyone here have a conflict of interest regarding mobile food vendors?
My wife does have a shaved ice business.
Shaved ice was determined in the past, if I'm not mistaken, is not food.
Correct.
Just frozen water.
We have that in our technical,
JPC.
yes, our Joint Planning Commission. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Anyone else? We have none.
Very good. Information regarding this item is provided on pages 190 through 194 of your agenda packet. And this text amendment was presented to the City of Sanford and Broadway in late 2022 due to the interest in allowing food trucks within the corporate limits of Sanford and at one location in Broadway. The Broadway Board of Commissioners and the City Council adopted the ordinance with the development standards originally presented to this board with a February 1st effective date. The delayed effective date allowed staff to create a new application and update our permitting software to accommodate the new permit and the fee. To date, staff has approved 23 mobile food vendor permits to operate within the City of Sanford, the majority of which would like to set up at the Hugger Mugger Microbrewery in downtown Sanford. This text amendment was presented to Lee County in January of 2023 to ensure that all areas of the county allow the new land use with development standards. Thus far, no one has expressed an interest in setting up a food truck in Lee County. The Lee County Planning Board met on January 16th after the public hearings were held to consider adding supplemental development regulations for mobile food vendors to the UDO. They tabled their decision until February 20th to allow ample time to consider the new standards. On February the 20th, the Planning Board voted to recommend approval of the text amendment with the language approved by Sanford and Broadway. They also acknowledged by vote that the text amendment is consistent with the Plan San Lee long-range plan because the proposed use more accurately reflects the commercial uses envisioned in the plan. As a reminder, the Commissioners should make 2 votes regarding this matter. Sample motions are provided for your reference, and Commissioners are always welcome to draft a unique motion if preferred. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mrs. McNeil?
I have questions and concerns.
Yes, sir?
So I'm going over some of these amendments. Now, I have to think of the unincorporated areas. The city may choose to do
Correct.
different. But I go down here and I see operating a mobile food vendor on an individual residentially zoned lot. So, which tells me if I'm having a big party out in the country, I can't have a food truck come. I don't see why that would be pertinent to anybody's business if I want a food truck at my party.
No, sir, a party is something at your residence that we wouldn't regulate. This would be a place where people go on a regular basis to operate a business.
Doesn't say that.
We can clarify that if you like.
Okay, it's not, so there's a clarification, thank you. Then the next item there, operating undeveloped vacant lot, even when there's permitted use, in terms of like industrial, for example. If I have a lot that is zoned for commercial, but it
Yes.
doesn't have a building adjacent to it or joined to it, I can't have a mobile food truck on there.
Correct.
To me, you're limiting my land use, one. We just had our revaluations come up. That is a way for somebody to help pay their tax rates. But this tells me that I can't have a food truck on there, which makes
Correct.
no sense to me.
A
So,
food truck is intended to be an accessory use, not a principal use. So in this matter, we were thinking of protecting the brick and mortar businesses that actually pay taxes. So you are correct. The way this is written, you would need the site to be developed with a paved parking lot, so we don't have a field that's muddy. We don't have residential neighbors perhaps that would have a commercial use next to them that just was temporary in nature, with no landscaping, no parking, no driveway permits, and no type of
well, you're
regulation.
asking a lot.
I'm sorry?
You're asking a lot for somebody just to have a full mobile food truck on a piece of property.
Okay.
Okay. Next
You
concern.
might as well build the building.
You might as well just build a building. Okay.
Correct.
I mean, you know, we do incubators all the time for entrepreneurs. This seems to be kind of difficult for them. So now, does the county have any permits for people like businesses in order to operate? Do we do permits? I know I have to do one for the state, which is like a privilege license. Do we have any other licenses?
You do not have a business permit. You need to secure a zoning approval, and then any other permits that would follow, but we don't have a local business
To
permit.
build, right. So here now,
Correct.
this vendor has to come within the county and has to buy a permit for a year.
Yes,
I think the city tried that one time with a privilege permit too.
correct.
How'd that go?
It didn't last.
Didn't last very long. So I think this is another thing that I don't think needs to be in our, you know, because somebody can be just coming in for the weekend and they have to get a permit. Maybe it's Friday evening and they can't operate.
Correct.
So there's another concern. The other thing is, I think we specified at the public hearing that this doesn't address areas where you can have mobile food trucks. And I think if you're gonna have a food truck ordinance, it should cover everything, and they told me it would come later.
Right,
Well, it's later and it's still not here.
sure.
I don't know
It's-
why it can't be combined.
Sure. That would be the food truck park.
Yeah, so I
Yes,
think
sir.
it should be part of your amendment right off the bat, so we know how everything plays. For some reason, I have a feeling there's a reason why it's not coming.
They were both presented to the Joint Planning Commission. At that time, the Joint Planning Commission was comfortable with the development standards for mobile food units or food trucks, but they wanted us to research what we're calling a food truck park a bit more. But they instructed us to go ahead with the food trucks because we have more people interested in that than in the food truck parks. The food truck park will go to public hearing this month in Lee County. It's already gone to public hearing in the Sanford, and they'll vote on it tomorrow night in Sanford.
See, my issue is that if I want to have a mobile food truck park, and now I have to have a building on it too,
Yes,
which means anybody that has a single lot with no building,
right.
well, that mobile food truck is gonna have to pay somebody to go use their land at the
Yes.
prices they choose,
Yes,
which is kind of limiting who and where they can go and who makes the money and who doesn't. So I think there's an issue there.
So-
I don't think fair play is involved is my big issue. Now, a few of us have businesses, and we understand how a lot of these businesses work. And we know regulation always seems to get in the, there's one thing we don't like on top of taxes is regulations.
So are you comfortable with allowing a food truck to set up on a vacant lot with no paved parking, no permanent signage, no permanent restroom facilities, no outdoor
Well,
dining.
it goes into the same thing which is next, and that is traffic control, right? There's a reason why in US 1, you have gas stations on both sides, because somebody's not gonna cross the median, turn all the way around and go use the other gas station, convenience.
Sure.
So if this lot has a problem and people can't have easy in and out, that's a bad place for a food truck. He's not gonna be there very long to begin with. So if the place is muddy, it doesn't look nice, people aren't gonna go anyways.
So you're recommending let the market make that decision?
I'm sorry?
So you're recommending let the market make that decision, where if it's a muddy place, people aren't gonna go there, they'll go someplace
so-
else?
I've been on the health board for 10 years. We regulate their food, and they have to call us when they come to this county to operate. They have to do that right now anyways, okay?
Yes.
I have never had one issue brought to the health department about a food truck. Not one. In 10 years, there's been not a concern. Now we have feral cat issues, we have other concerns. This isn't one that we ever had a concern with. I'm just saying there seems to be a lot of rush for something, and I don't understand why. So this is just food for thought that I'm throwing out.
Sure.
All right, so, now, when I do, is another thing. So if I'm a food truck and I'm looking through this, I want things that pertain to me specifically. So I want the least amount of reading as possible. Then it comes to vendor shall not locate 15 feet from a fire hydrant. I mean, all trucks can. I don't think the fact that there's the word food in front of truck, they all of a sudden forget that no one can park 15 feet away from a food truck, from a fire hydrant. I'm just saying, make things a little easier. Handicap accessible spaces, I don't know, what happens if the driver's handicapped of the food truck? Does that change things, federally law? I don't know, right? I'm just throwing that out there. Another big thing, limiting the time from 6 AM to 12 PM. Down in Wilmington, I think some of the bars close, I'm told, at 5 AM in the morning, and there's a hot dog vendor there. What about people that finish third shift? Where can they go get something to eat? They're limited, maybe a vendor is on their parking lot, feeding them on their way out of work. So I don't know why we're limiting them in terms of time frame. I don't think why that is a concern to us either. I don't even know how you would even police that. I mean, most of these things, I think we have bigger issues than to worry about if food trucks open past midnight. So there's a lot of concerns I have with this. So I'm just gonna make a motion. I'd like the board to table this and the planning board to think about those concerns. And see other, because some things that may be relevant for the city is not relevant for the county.
Sure. So would you like to make a motion to table this and it be remanded back to the planning board for consideration of the items that you mentioned this evening?
You heard the motion.
Yeah, I would love that. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Further discussion? Commissioner Sharp? Commissioner Reeves?
Are you gonna look at the food truck park at the same time?
I would love that. Thank you, sir.
That would make sense.
Sure. Are there any other items, and I'm sorry, I know the motion's been made, but are there any other items you would like us to look at when it goes back to the planning board?
Not unless
What-
anybody else has
I
anything.
just
they
have,
wanna add.
well, I have
Commissioner
just
Vorbeck?
two, sorry. So it says the signage must comply with regulations found in Article 11. I apologize, I didn't know where Article 11 was.
Okay. Article 11 is our sign regulations in the UDO.
Okay,
I can provide that for you as a reference if
so
you'd
you're
like.
saying like any of their signs have to fit in Article 11?
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
okay.
I think all businesses do that now anyways. I think,
Yes.
unless you have a logo that doesn't fit, but logos then would be okay because they're registered trademarks.
Well, I'm just
right?
thinking they do
Absolutely.
like, if are they allowed to put duct tape on something because they've ran out of it? Or does their
Oh.
chalkboard sign have to meet font 14 of Arabic?
I think it's more colors and size, isn't it?
It is, it's
Okay.
more,
And that's why I was saying, I don't
put up
even know what
illegal
it
pennants,
is.
flags kind of thing.
Okay,
No vulgarity, things of this nature, right?
okay. I just didn't know how limiting, because I know sometimes some of the sign ordinance can get kind of limiting on what you're allowed to do. So that was one thing probably because I'm just like to make unique signs, but, and then you were saying shaved ice does not fall under food?
Yeah.
Correct.
Those
Okay.
trucks, they don't have to be inspected like
Is there-
other food trucks
Are
do.
there any other trucks that aren't considered food? Is it just shaved
Not
ice?
that anyone has run by me.
Donuts,
Donuts is not,
aren't they still under?
North
Department of
Carolina
Agriculture?
Department of Agricultural for baked goods.
Yes, Department of Agriculture, same as shaved ice.
okay, because that was one of the residents' ones was, I know, like, I've been to a few birthday parties that, like, they brought a shaved ice truck, or they brought, I was just trying to, where they brought like a taco truck to feed, so I was trying to figure out where that falls in.
Once again, at birthday parties, we wouldn't regulate that. That's just
How come?
somebody at a party.
Yeah, but if it's,
I'm
you just said
confused,
residential, I can't
it's at a
bring a food truck
residence.
to my house.
You can as long as it's not on a regular basis, like you're operating a business. If you're having a
Oh.
party,
Doesn't quite state that.
We don't get into that.
Then that's very gray.
That's very gray.
Yeah, because I don't read that anywhere in there.
because your land use is your residential use, your single-family use. You just happen to be having a party at your house.
Okay,
But we can clarify that.
yeah, sorry, I don't read that at all. I read that as you
Sure.
can't have it at all.
And we can clarify that.
I
But
have no
that'll add
intentions of
words.
having a taco truck at my house on a daily basis, though, if someone would like to ride around my neighborhood on a daily basis, I'm good with. But, okay, just so you know, that's not how I read that at all. It
Okay.
seems very limiting.
Yeah, same with the traffic, you know, that's what I mean, you're stating, well, we don't agree this spot is gonna interfere with traffic flow. That's ambiguous, I think, as well. I think convenience dictates traffic flow,
Okay.
in my opinion. Thank you.
Commissioner Lovick.
The only, you know, one reason I did mention my wife had shaved ice, because it mentioned here under mobile food vendor, it says shall include vendors of food, drink, or other consumable products. That's the only reason that
Yeah, ice is consumable, I think, but,
yeah, but it's under mobile food vendors.
yeah, that's different.
So I'm wondering, and that's one reason I wanted to disclose that.
And we can clarify that if you like.
Okay, well, I don't, you know, I got a lot of eyes looking at me, so I don't want to do anything wrong.
That's okay.
We discussed that in detail, as a matter of fact, in our joint planning commission.
Yeah, but reading that, it's.
You're right, I agree. So we have some clarification. Commissioner Carver,
No comment.
no comments. Seeing there are no further, yes, sir.
Before we vote, I would ask, in consideration of the, you mentioned that the other food truck vendors are trying to get this thing expedited.
It has already been adopted in Broadway and Sanford, yes, sir, but we've had no one express an interest in locating a food truck in Lee County, so we have
Okay.
time to work on
That's
this
fine.
if you want to
Thank
be different.
That's fine.
Because, you know, some of the food trucks aren't in Lee County. They're not, you know?
I just thought we would ask
Yeah, yeah.
that board to go ahead and expedite a decision on it and get back to us.
Thank
Well,
you.
the city will vote on the food truck part text amendment tomorrow night.
All right.
Thank you.
But you're
You're
gonna
welcome.
expedite the request this board is making.
To the planning board is what you mean, right?
Right. Well, we'll have to go to public hearing. The earliest we can go to public hearing is the third Monday of next month, but that's already planned for your agenda.
Any other questions? The motion's been made. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion's tabled. Next item, I gotta refresh my limited time computer laptop. Sorry about that. We're going back to first item on the consent agenda, OSMB. Jen Waterhouse, would you like to address this, please? Your name's here.
I sure would, sir.
Thank you.
So we have put on the agenda for you all to review the contracts that were put together for the entities that were identified by Senator Burgeon that came from OSBM. So essentially, we were volunteered to be a pass-through entity for 11 different entities. And one of them are the sheriff's office, and there will not be a contract for them because they are owned by the county, obviously. So there's only 10 contracts in front of you. And do you have any questions specifically for me? This
Could
was,
we list those contracts? Do you have them in front of you? If not, I can read them.
I do not have them in front of
Okay.
me. I can list the entities, but I don't have the specific.
The entities
Oh,
is
okay.
fine.
Okay. So we have the Boys and Girls Club, Central Carolina Hospital, the Helping Hands Clinic, Kiwanis Park, which is also City of Sanford, North Carolina Veterans Memorial, OMI, Reach Out Pregnancy Clinic, Salvation Army, Veterans Court, and Veteran Harbor, Inc., and then, of course, the Sheriff's Office.
Okay, and for public knowledge, these are all funding, all these agencies are being funded directly by the state legislature, where Senator Bergen acquired $800,000 and sent it to the county for us to disperse with those specific entities.
That is correct.
So the moral of the story is, shake down your senator and your representative. Any questions of Jen? Commissioner Carver?
None.
Commissioner Levick?
None.
Commissioner Connect?
Thank you.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
No, sir.
Commissioner Reeves?
I asked about Veteran Harbor.
Okay.
Are they operating in Lee already, or,
It is my understanding they will be soon.
so your answer is no, they're not operating already?
It cannot be, to my knowledge, no, but I could be misinformed.
I'm aware of Veterans Harbor. I don't know the specific details. But they purchased a house, or they're in the process of purchasing a house right across from the DMV. It's off Carthage. And they are going to proceed to make that a rehabilitation facility for veterans suffering from various types of substance abuse. We actually have helped them with a dumpster while they were clearing the land and the debris from that property. The individual who owned that property is right now participating in the Veterans Treatment Court, and Veterans Harbor picked up on assisting him from that Veterans Treatment Court. He will be the caretaker of the facility once it's finally completed, and then he will be allowed to live there for the rest of his life. So Veterans Harbor, as I understand it, is a facility. I want to say, are they in Harnett County? I do not know. Harnett County?
I'm trying to understand, how does that benefit all of Lee County? I understand the one individual, I don't,
It's going to benefit, it's going to be a home for additional veterans who are suffering from substance
so
abuse.
he'll share the home with others?
Correct, but under the auspices of Veterans Harbor.
Okay. And how does the public seek assistance with Veterans Harbor?
Obviously, one has to be a veteran. I do not know
I
the
figured
details
that
on
part
that.
out.
Yeah, I do not know the details on how one pursues that, but, and I know that Ms. Gabrielle was here, and we need to do some research and integrate them into our network with the Veterans Council,
Yeah.
so that we have that,
On our
that
Facebook
avenue.
page,
Excuse me,
on our Facebook page,
if you do Facebook,
put on our Facebook page, so
yeah.
people can hear and see.
And the other issue for me is, I'm not sure that the general public understands that these are different pots of money.
Correct.
As you just pointed out, this came from the General Assembly, the ARPA money comes from the federal government, and then we have our own budget, and that's where a lot of the confusion is taking place.
Correct.
And, all right, I just like things to be above board, so,
Different funding sites and
that's correct.
different requirements and rules.
Different times.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp, questions?
No questions, but just to add to what Commissioner Reeves said, I just want the public to understand, we're just a pass-through for the money. And I don't think some people understand that part.
I think the General Assembly chose that, this list, I believe.
Any further questions for Jen? I do need a requirement to approve as presented
So
the
moved.
OSMB Senator Bergen grant contracts.
So moved.
Motion's been made to approve the the OSBM Senator Bergen grant contracts for this current fiscal year. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Under new business, Lee County Community Health Assessment. Please introduce yourself. You are strange to some of us.
Good evening. evening. My name is Michelle Vasquez. I am the new health education supervisor at the health department. And I'm here to do a brief overview about our community health assessment. The booklets are being passed out. There's a digital copy on our website and as well as more physical copies at the health department. So the 2022 Lee County Community Health Assessment is complete. This product was a collaborative effort from many groups and individuals that took place over many months. We were able to assemble it into this beautiful deliverable for you all to take a look at, all the data. A few highlights we observed throughout this process. We received a total of 663 community surveys. That includes Spanish and English and online and paper copies of that survey. We're really happy with this response because the previous community health assessment in 2018 only gathered 225, so the number was almost tripled. In addition to the survey, we also held 3 community focus groups, which allowed us to gather more feedback and context outside of the survey questions. For example, instead of asking them a question that would yield a closed answer, it allowed them more freedom to respond with what was their response personally. So the results from the survey and focus group provided us with the following main health priorities: mental health, healthy eating and active living, substance use disorders and overdoses, and social determinants of health. We view this as an opportunity to address these concerns through engaging the local community with state funding, grant funding, and outreach partnerships. And this community health assessment was unique because it was the first time that the health department has partnered with Central Carolina Hospital, and we think that's one of the reasons why we yielded more survey responses. We view it as a very successful partnership with the hospital, so we will be partnering with them for the next community health assessment that will take place for 2025. And our next step after this is to compose community health improvement plans for each of the mentioned health priorities, and again, working with state funding, local funding, and local partnerships to create those plans to try to address those needs that were expressed in the health assessment. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Vasquez? Commissioner Sharp?
No, but thank you for the beautiful thing you put together here.
Commissioner Reeves?
No.
It's too much reading, right? I went through a bunch of those pages. Commissioner Vorbeck?
You said that your next action step is to create, I guess, more action steps on
Yes.
the top things. Do you have a time frame on those?
So we're currently working on them, and we're trying to implement them about April, I would say. And then the state requires us to start reporting on them by September. So the actual data that we've been working on will be online by September.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Connect?
Good, thank you.
Commissioner Lovick?
First of all, thank you for being at El Refuge the other night. And my question isn't about this, but what kind of feedback did you get from there the other night?
So, let's see. Something that we've been seeing a lot is community residents not knowing the services that are provided at the health department. So that's why we have been really trying to do and go to different events and promote the services we have, like our Narcan clinic, which is free, our community care program, which is free, and these different services that people don't know about. And so that, I would say, is the biggest feedback that we received, is people becoming aware of what we're providing and trying to bridge that gap between what's happening.
Okay. Thank you for being out there the other night.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carver?
The one question I have has to do with, actually, you can look at page 66, and that talks about the categorization of the age groups that you actually interviewed. And my real question has to do with segregating data, because you have a bulk, 28% of all your responses are 70 to 74. Then we have another high area at 50 to 54 and 60 to 64. which obviously could bias the information
Yes.
in the interest of those demographics. And I'm wondering whether or not you looked at segregating the data, for example, looking at people that are young. And then making comments and trying to identify some priorities based on the information you have in those categories.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, sir. Yes, that's a very good point. I think that's a piece of information that can be used for our next one, for sure. I wasn't on the committee that was planning this community health assessment. I started in December, so I wasn't on this committee, but that's a very good point. And I think one of those ways we were trying to reach the younger audience is through the online survey, so I think that was maybe one attempt. In the future, I think engaging groups more intentionally to gather more data that can be generalized.
It's also true that even with this data, if somebody was to sit down and say, okay, maybe you don't have perfect data from this area, but what does it say about those people in that demographic? And as you continue your analysis, that would maybe improve your outcomes,
Yes,
right? Instead of just talking about what the 70 to 74 people want.
that's true. So I think that's something we can think about as we're moving forward with our improvement plan.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would be interested in any feedback you would have in that regard, because I'd like to know really how much bias there was and how it might really improve us if we were thinking. People understand the importance of good medical care and response to older people, but we also have some really significant issues with drug abuse and that kind of thing that'd really be nice to know for the younger people. But thank you for your work, because I know this is a lot of data. Okay,
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Vasquez, can I compliment you on having been here since December and being forward and coming forth presenting this?
Thank
You
you.
did wonderful.
Thank
I
you.
do have a concern, and that concern is not because of you. The concern is that our population in our county is over 63,000, give or take. And 663 people conducted this survey. That really, we have a lot of communications to do
Yes.
in order to transmit to the citizens. We would like your input. Here it is. Please provide it. It's, considering it's been an improvement, I guess we'll have to accept that, but
Yes.
we need to definitely work on that.
That, I think, our opinions of the health department, I feel we would like that number to increase. So that is, I think that coincides with us also getting more involved with our community partners, getting more involved with the community events that happen, and build those partnerships for whenever we plan things like the community assessment, we have more partnerships and reach more residents. And I think that's what we're trying to do. Now, since I've been here, I've seen that action pick up a lot. So I'm very happy with that. And that's something we're really trying to prioritize, is just building the community partnerships and partnerships with the residents.
Any other questions for Ms. Vasquez?
I'd just like to say one other thing, and that's the idea that we're till 2025, right? Is the next one?
Correct.
All right. I think the comments we're making here are really germane to the success of your program. And making sure that those lessons learned are passed on is really important. And the last thing I want to emphasize again is that the data is here now. Can we segregate it? Can we find out some specifics? Where do the funds come to pay for this?
I don't have that answer for you. I would have to reach out with our health director, Heath Kane,
Yeah.
to get that specific.
I guess if we follow the money, then we can make sure that these suggestions are in fact being put in the right
Yes.
place. That would be my suggestion. Thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, young lady.
Thank you so much.
I wish IT would fix my computer so it doesn't phase out after about 3 minutes. Then they said they can't. So much for IT. No, they do great work. They're always busy with the sheriff's department. Is the deputy in here? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Land Water Conservation Fund land conversion. Mr. Keel.
Good evening.
So DOT is planning on putting a traffic circle at the intersection of Wicker and Carthage. And to make that traffic circle happen, they need .13 acres of Kiwanis Children's Park to use as right-of-way. And since Kiwanis Children's Park is tied to federal grant funding, there has to be a land conversion process. So the city has agreed to give us 2.52 acres adjacent to Horton as the land swap. So if approved tonight, the next step would be sending our proposal to the National Park Service for them to take a look at these maps and for their final sign-off.
Questions for Mr. Keel? Commissioner Carver?
Just real quick, why do you have to pay up with 2.5 acres for .13?
Well, that's a benefit to us. So,
Oh, that's a benefit to you?
yeah, so we're giving up .13 and getting 2.52.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
Good job.
and the .13 that we're getting rid of is unusable park. So
I got you.
it's a huge slope. We would never be able to do anything with it anyway.
And it helps the traffic.
Yes, sir.
Traffic circle's coming. Commissioner Levick?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Connect?
Thank you.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
How does that play into finishing out the Kiwanis Park? You may not be able to answer that now that I just spoke that out loud.
No.
Okay.
So phase 2 for Kiwanis Children's Park is ready to go out to bid.
Because wasn't there a section that was gonna be kind of near that, was like a pond, like the stream or whatever was gonna be extended?
No, we're gonna build a sidewalk that connects the Wicker side of the park up to where Medicine Park Pharmacy is.
Okay.
The only thing that this project with the traffic circle will impact on the park is the shelter. And
Yeah.
and I have agreed, or DOT has agreed, that they're gonna tear the shelter down and build us a brand new one at Horton.
Wow, you did a great job.
It takes a team.
Commissioner Reeves?
Is that city piece down behind the pool in that little garden section?
It is, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
They're gonna put some trails there and stuff, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
walking trails.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sharp?
That's nice.
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the land swap at Kiwanis? Motion's been made to approve the land swap at Kiwanis Children's Park and Horton Park and authorize the chairman to sign the Horton Park land conversion map. Any further discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is to approve the supplemental opioid settlement funds and authorizing resolution.
Yes, that's mine. If the board recalls, back in August of 2021, Lee County government, along with all 100 NZ counties and a few of the larger municipalities, approved the memorandum of agreement that had been negotiated between the NCACC 555 committee and the North Carolina Attorney General's office. And that MOA guides us as to how we will spend the opioid settlement funds that are going to be coming from the multi-district litigation in Ohio. This is the second round of settlements that are occurring between the three big distributors. So the supplemental agreement for additional funds has been once again negotiated between the NCACC and the NC Attorney General's office. And so at this point, given the second set of settlement funds, my understanding is I don't know how much exactly Lee County will receive out of that, but it will work the same way. The state of North Carolina, I believe, is going to receive around $600 million, and then they will distribute it out amongst the local governments in the state. And so at this time, I'm asking the board to authorize the supplemental opioid settlement funds and the authorizing resolution, which will allow the chair and/or the county manager authority to sign any and all documents related to the settlement. And we will be agreeing to spend the second wave of funds in the same manner as we've agreed to spend the first wave of funds, according to the MOA.
Questions for the attorney? Commissioner Sharp?
No, sir.
Motion's been made to approve the
I
supplement.
would ask that you clarify that 600 million that's not coming to Lee County.
That's right. It's not coming to Lee County
That's
government.
right, make that point.
I don't know that amount yet.
That's right.
She said that more than once. Okay, The motion's been made to approve supplemental opioid settlement funds and authorizing resolution. Any comments, Commissioner Reeves? Questions?
I wish the 600 was coming to us. We could use it by all means for mental health support, but no.
Commissioner Vorbeck, questions for the attorney?
No, sir.
Commissioner Connect?
Thank you.
Commissioner Lovick?
None, thank you.
Commissioner Carver?
The only question I have is the structure for compensating counsel the same in the second one as the first one?
No, sir, it's gonna be a different, so with a national firm, the national attorneys will be paid out of the MDL up there. This does is, the second wave is setting aside a small fund for the local counsel and how that will be distributed. I guess the NCSCC or the Attorney General's office will work that out.
So we've taken kind of a look at that and we feel comfortable that that's a good plan?
Our local counsel has suggested we sign on to this as well.
Probably classified.
That's precisely the question, I guess. I understand in his interest, it's good for him to be included, but
Yes, sir,
I know there was just some discussion about how that was gonna be handled with the first one, and that's why I'm asking about the second one.
yes, I would feel comfortable that we move forward with this.
Okay?
Motion's been made to approve the supplemental opioid settlement funds and authorizing resolution. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We will now move to the manager's report. Madam Manager,
No pressure, first one.
first one. Better be good.
Well, we've had some questions about the nonprofit funding for this coming fiscal year, '24, and pulled our policy that was amended back on May 16th, 2022. And those amendments capped our policy funding at $65,000 and also required that all applicants also have to have a $10,000 bond, and then that the property taxes, if any, have to be paid or paid for any eligible applicants, and that those applications would be reviewed by the county manager and her designees, and then we would come up with a recommended funding that would be presented to the board in the annual budget process. The policy typically does have us open up for applications, but back at the board retreat at the end of January, the board directed us not to open it up for applications other than to agencies that were already receiving county-funded dollars from the county and stuff. So that's the action we have taken. We did just figure out today that one agency had been missed, and they have been forwarded an application now, and that one agency had been forwarded one in error. So, but those corrections have been dealt with. So I'll be glad to answer any other questions you may have at this point, but that's the process we're moving ahead with at this time.
Questions for Manager Mentor? Commissioner Sharp?
No, not at this time.
Commissioner Reeves?
I just want to make sure that the nonprofit services being offered have to benefit Lee County.
That's correct. We
Okay.
will take that into account when we review what services are being considered.
Right.
Commissioner Vorbeck?
No, sir.
Commissioner Connect?
Thank you.
Commissioner Lovick?
Before I got on the board, I think you made this comment, Commissioner Reeves, some of the meetings I attended about those coming to us and presenting what they're using the money for and all throughout the year. And
Oh,
I haven't seen that, and I'd like to see part of that is the funding.
Well, it can be part of the budget discussion.
Yeah. That's all I have, thank you.
Commissioner Carver?
I'm just concerned, and I understand that this was discussed briefly during the retreat, but the idea that we are somehow doubly benefiting that segment of people who were selected last year and not opening the window to at least consider other people that submit this year, it seems arbitrary to me at this point. And I would suggest that the fact that we last week or last meeting had 3 different organizations come and talk to us, and I'm not even sure whether or not they were on the list or not. There was generally not a good understanding out there in the nonprofit community about how we were gonna do it. We have a procedure. The procedure was promulgated, and then we go ahead and change it because of the retreat and just saying, well, we're not gonna do it that way. In retrospect, I'm not sure that that's really very easily understood by the people who were not included last year and then not even being considered this year. And I just wonder whether or not there's some additional concepts or thoughts on that process that we're taking. And I guess I'll emphasize one other thing. We have a policy. Why are we not going ahead and following through with the policy? That would be something that would eliminate some confusion and maybe some issues of fairness.
As I understand the policy, and we've just highlighted it, but I think the confusion comes from the ARPA money fundings, we have the opioid funding, we've got Senator Burgeon's gracious gift to the community from the legislature. So we do have a lot of folks desiring access to those funds. We just have to be very, very careful with the taxpayers' money when it comes to our local funding policy. Just remember, the county hands out $65,000 to nonprofits each year, and the city chooses not to do that. And a lot of these nonprofits are within the city, so they're benefiting as well.
In all respect, I'm not sure that answers my issue. First of all, why don't we follow our policy? That would be number one, which says that we're going to take on people who submit. And then number two, there's a perception that we have now in place a decision made relatively rapidly that we're going to just reconsider the people that we gave money to last year, which at its face seems difficult to understand, especially if you're one of the nonprofits out there.
Well, our policy can change.
I've never understood the policy to mean that just because you apply, you would be awarded an appropriation. That's not my understanding of the policy. You had to show proof that it truly benefited the county and the citizens of Lee County.
I would agree. Just because you apply doesn't mean
Right.
that you're going to be selected.
Right.
But if you were not selected last year for good reason, because we ran out of money, then why shouldn't you at least be considered this year if you still have performance that suggests that you're really contributing to our county? Why should you not, is next year we're going to violate the policy again and award the same money to the same people again?
Well, understand, we had a marathon session last year, as I recall, and I want to say it was close to $300,000 in requests, and we limited it to $65,000. We're not going to help everybody's, meet their requests.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
Mr.
that's-
Chairman, I agree. But I'm saying that's why we rewrote the policy, so that we could streamline that procedure. And then we imposed that in March of last year. And now we're going back and saying, no, we're just going to revisit the people that we awarded in '21 and not, or '22, I'm sorry, and not look at anybody else again in accordance with the policy. So I guess that's what I'm challenging.
Do you wish to make a motion to direct the manager?
If you feel that's in order, yeah. I would move that we rethink this that we address that sum of money that was authorized in our policy and consider anybody who applies.
No, so then a question, Pudge, how much staff time is going to be appropriated to this particular one issue? This can take a lot of time. I think the reason why we picked some of those, one is because they have a great track record. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think Commissioner Reeves has been here longer than I have. They have a great track record. They do things for the county, like the Boys and Girls Clubs, that we probably would fund ourselves, don't need to, because they do that activities. And I think we're comfortable with the ones we've chosen. I'm not saying I'm not opposed, but I just don't know how much staff time will this take up. It took a lot of staff time last time. I don't know where that ends and where it begins. I mean, budget process is very time consuming. How much time do you want to spend on this one issue?
Well, I can say
That's what you have to direct staff now.
To answer your question, I went through the list of people that proposed or asked for us help last time. And I don't remember, there was something like 21 or something like that.
19.
19? Okay. And I think since we've done it before and we went ahead and rewrote the policy this way, we could somehow carve out enough time to just look at those. I was able to sit down and make a pretty good guess of where I thought the money should go, my own personal way, in about an hour. And I would think that maybe the staff could do the same kind of thing. But again, let's go back and revisit the fact that that's what the policy says we're gonna do. Are we at the point of my, my motion in that?
I would suggest that you've done this in an hour. Why don't you just give us the piece of paper and then we'll see how it looks. I think sometimes when you dilute the funds that you have, you make other ones not be able to carry out the services we're trying to provide.
And that's why our policy addresses a certain minimum that we will pay.
Right,
Which
and
I
so
think
when
is
you dilute it too
$10,000.
much, it almost comes to be irrelevant. You know, if everybody gets $100, it almost becomes irrelevant for, I'm just assuming. I would suggest maybe you hand those things out, let us all review them, and we may, hey, you know, I like this one, and then we can take a look at it in our time, and then you can bring it up.
Okay, that's not part of my motion. My motion is to go back to using the policy. And there are limits there of $10,000, I think, if I recall. Was it?
The manager has the details.
The minimum is 2,000 and the maximum is 10,000 based on the policy that you have at this time.
I see. So that issue has been considered. But again, these issues were discussed last year to come up with a policy that we could live with and solve these problems that Commissioner Connect is properly identifying, but we talked about them last year. Anyway, thank you for being patient to listen.
No, I appreciate that list, though, that you came up with.
You want a list from me?
Well, the list you came up with for our review, you know, you said you had a list of how you would.
That
do
was
the
last
funds.
year.
He was saying last year.
Last
Oh, last year's, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
thought you
yeah,
had a
yeah.
new one, I'm sorry.
So we haven't solicited them from other people other than the ones that we gave to last year.
Any additional discussions? Commissioner Sharp?
No.
Commissioner Reeves?
Well, it's like I said from the very outset of the meeting, there's a lot of confusion about the different pots of money. And when we do our nonprofits, we usually deal with it during the budget period, and that's when the discussion ought to take place, as far as I'm concerned. And it's
Okay.
just like with the ARPA money, you know, I think the staff went back, contacted the federal government and said, what will qualify under the spending? And they gave a set of parameters and said, anything outside of this, you don't qualify. And that's what we have to do in terms of watching the money.
Okay, anything else, Lisa, on your manager's report?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on to commissioner comments. We'll start with Commissioner Sharp, and then we'll go into closed session.
Did you want to vote on that?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
You
I'm
made a
sorry,
motion.
with the motion, go ahead, refresh my motion.
That we return to the policy that we wrote in March of '22 to determine who should receive the $65,000.
Are you saying you want us to open up the application process?
To send, yeah, you've already sent out applications to the people from last year, right?
Correct.
So you would have to send out applications or make them available,
Right.
however you advertised that before.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Show of hands of those in support of the motion, please. Those opposed, raise hands. Motion doesn't carry. Thank you. Commissioners' comments, starting with Commissioner Sharp.
Yeah, I got a couple of things. As you guys probably got calls just like I did about the revaluation process. And I got one question, if someone could maybe the county manager or maybe Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, Mr. Brown, Commissioner Brown. Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Mr. Brown.
So I have people saying that, we don't know whether we should appeal this thing because we don't know what the rate's gonna be. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Well, that shouldn't matter. I mean, it's not just, it shouldn't matter
It's
what the
what?
rate is. If their evaluation isn't right, it shouldn't matter what the rate is. It's not right, they should
Well,
appeal it.
if it's $100,000 dollars in value, I'm sure they don't think
Now,
it's right.
I did ask staff to ask if, Kravaskas, is he here? Oh, I think on our website, if I'm wrong, and you can clarify that, you can go look at your comps that were used. So you don't have to call your realtor and wait and work them. I think they're on our website. So you can
I'm glad to
clarify.
address that.
Well, his question first. I didn't want to cut
Right.
his question, but.
I'll get
I'm
his
sorry.
question first.
Yeah.
Certainly, there's different functions as to the reappraisal. The reappraisal from our first concern is value. So we send out 32,000 notices, and we are giving taxpayers a time frame to appeal. So first of all, we've got to go through the valuation process.
Excuse me, just so
And-
everybody knows, those are state statutes on your time for appeals.
Well, we have a time frame for the Board of Equalization and Review. I can talk about that in just a minute. So by law, yes, the first part, there is no process for the informal process, really. There's no defined process. The law basically gives the assessor power to make changes to values until the Board of Equalization and Review convenes. So basically, our office has the right to address and look at anything that we need to prior to the Board of Equalization and Review convening. We're going to try to convene. We're supposed to meet and have a training session and kind of discuss some things with them on Thursday. So we're looking to try to have the Board of Equalization Review during the month of April. So that's what we're anticipating right now.
Which is when they'll actually convene, because this Thursday.
Convene,
Just training.
right. It's a training session this week. It's not a meeting of the board, but it's just for training purposes to try to let them be aware of their duties. We basically call it a charge to the Board of Equalization and Review. So hopefully we'll have to advertise when we're gonna have the Board of Equalization Review, and we'll put that in the Sanford Herald, and then that, hopefully we're looking to be April 1st through the end of the month for that period. We're gonna try to get our reviews of our informals out during the month of March, so then taxpayers have 30 days to appeal from any decision they get that they file informally. So first of all, the values are what we're looking at. So is your value true value? Now, if your value went up 50,000, or if your value went up 100,000, I understand the taxpayer's concern, and I do know that, that can weigh on people. But certainly, the issue of is it true value is the pertinent question, because we're not defending the old reappraisal. We're trying to emulate what buyers and sellers in the marketplace have made transactions on properties for. So if the taxpayer calls us and they say, I'm going to appeal because my value went up $100,000, and that's the only information they have, that's not very fruitful, in my opinion, for the taxpayer to gain any reward from that. Now, if the taxpayer says, I have a $300,000 house, it's not $350,000, and they bring us information, documentation as to the value or true value of the property is not what we have stated it to be on our notice, that is information that we need to look at, and that's what we need to talk about, because the amount of the increase is not a valid reason to appeal. And that's even kind of been looked at through the courts if you go to the Property Tax Commission with the state and such as that. So once we get the value established, and we're talking about true value or market value, then the next step in the process is the tax rate. So the tax base will be established by our office. We'll establish the tax base hopefully end of March, beginning of April. We'll submit that to county manager and finance office. After we do that, they then take that information and they work with it to determine your needs, the county budget's needs, and work with that to try to establish, okay, with the information that they have, what does the tax rate need to be in relation to the tax base and the budgetary needs? That actually gives you what information would relate to the tax rate. We've had taxpayers call us up and ask us to use last year's tax rate against the new value. Well, that's not really pertinent. And we've tried to be polite about it. We've tried to talk to taxpayers, but last year's tax rate is not pertinent to use for this year because in our eyes at the tax office, we think that for the information that we've put out about values, and values are typically gone up about 47% countywide, then we think the tax rate would come down. So using this, last year's tax rate just doesn't seem applicable, or doesn't seem like it would make good sense.
Could I offer one thing?
Yes.
You put out a message, I don't know whether it came from your office or what, but the Comper thing, C-O-M-P-E-R?
Right, yes, sir, I'll talk about that in just one second.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
what's your question related to
Well,
that?
I just wanted to say, I went on there to look at mine to find out, well, what was my damage? And I was impressed because it lists right there, it gives you comps right on the thing. Shows you pictures of comparable houses that were used in the evaluation.
Right.
And it makes it harder to say, well, it wasn't fair. It's right there.
Well, that's what I was just
Have
telling
I-
them, because people are calling their realtor, hey, what are my comps in this area? You don't need to do that. They're on the website.
But in relation to value, do you have any other questions as to
No.
value increase or true value?
No,
or
I'm just saying, I
Okay.
think the public don't
I understand.
understand about the 30
It's-
days to appeal.
It's an education. Every reappraisal is an education process. And we get phone, we had one voicemail from a taxpayer that thought we sent them a $150,000 tax bill. So anytime we send out a reappraisal notice, it is an education process. So we're talking to taxpayers about the value, we're talking to them about the increase, we're talking to them about the general statutes, we're talking to them about what's relevant into today's market, because today's market is a market like we've never seen. We tried to do our best to arrive at market value.
Well, and I think there, two things that you pointed out that I've gotten similar phone calls on is the reason why they're using last year's tax rate is they don't have any other tax rate to go after, so they're doing worst case scenario, which again, doesn't make sense, but in their mind, it makes sense, and they're trying to figure out how they're gonna get by with that increase.
Well,
And then secondly, they're also market value, true value in 6 to 8 months. If there's a bubble that burst, they're gonna be paying on this value for 4 years.
for the next 4 years.
Yeah,
That's
so,
correct, because in a non-reappraisal year, you can't adjust the value for inflation, deflation,
Yeah.
or general economics in the county.
And the reverse is
So-
true. It can continue to go up, and you're not
That's-
paying that extra.
Oh, it could,
And that's correct.
I'm playing the devil's
Because-
advocate of the phone calls that I know you guys have gotten as well, I'm just also,
Because since January 1 of 19, the values have done nothing but just run.
yeah.
And on an increase. And we certainly haven't tried to, catch that over the last 4 years. We've had a lot of growth because of new construction and, development and such as that, which is good. But a reappraisal, every one of them's different. What's an issue this time won't be an issue next time because, every reappraisal is a learning process. What do we do good this reappraisal? What do we need to work on for the next one? And so certainly, we're trying to do our best with it. We're trying to listen and talk to taxpayers. We get a lot of different phone calls for different reasons. Taxpayers have questions. We're trying to work with them as best we can. Elderly, disabled, their values have increased. We're trying to work through that and talk to them and provide as much information as we can. And also, there's the present use value program, which for people who have, farmland or forest land or horticultural land, they can qualify instead of being taxed at market value, they could be taxed at present use value, which is lower, so. But certainly, we would encourage any taxpayer that has a question, we understand they call you, but we certainly, turn them towards our office, and we'll be glad to talk to them and try to provide as much information as we can.
You mentioned the training session for the Board of E&R. Is that a closed training session, or is it open to the public?
I think it would be open, because basically, you have appointed the Special Board of Equalization Review. So we're gonna have, a member of the Department of Revenue
Yeah.
to come down and to actually do that training with our board.
Yeah.
And, we're certainly looking for 2 more, alternates to serve on that board, so
Right.
we would like to have, 2 more alternates to
I
help us.
think that would be good for the public to know and know where it's gonna be held so that those who are interested can come by.
It will be here on Thursday at 9
Here,
o'clock
then, right, in here?
in this room here.
Okay, yeah. And the other part of it is, sometimes, when I got mine, I thought somebody had added on to my house in the back somewhere. I didn't know it worked that. But anyway, sometimes it helps for an individual to have a general idea of what would make a difference in their challenging the new appraisal.
Documentation is what we're looking for, either a recent appraisal report,
Right.
information as to, deferred maintenance, things
Yeah.
of that nature. So, any information they feel that makes their house different from, those houses that have possibly sold or such. That's what we're looking for.
Okay.
In relation to Comper, Comper is some software that we've been able to acquire by the county commissioners providing funding for that. Spatialist is the name of the company. Comper is the name of the product that they have, and it's actually on our website. If you go to leecounty.nc.gov, from there go to departments, from there go to tax administration, and you can go to that page. Below the icons that are on that page, there's a sentence basically says, if you're looking for comparable sales information, try Comper. And then we have some information there. I'm not sure when it was appropriate. I thought that I was asked to maybe,
No, you just don't know where to get it. It'd be
Okay.
good if it was on, maybe on our Facebook page or
Okay.
something like that, right?
yes.
How do you, are people able to use that as proof of their house not
Well, I
getting
think,
to the value?
I think what Comper does, it actually provides you with information to help you understand and see what's going on in the marketplace. And if you want me to, I can show you some information about that if you'd like. Sure. Okay. Will this come off?
Commissioner Sharp, you do know you've exceeded your commission comment time, so just letting you know. Just kidding.
I do have one more thing.
Okay.
I'm going to sit from here and try to drive the bus and get you to where Comper is located. If you go to the Lee County website, from there, you can go to departments. From there, go to tax administration. And then tax administration is actually gonna load up here. Once you slide down the page and you go below the icons, need assistance searching for comparable sales, click Comper. And if we need to make that a little bit larger, a little bit, more pronounced so that people actually can see that, we certainly can do that if you wish.
Definitely.
You can move it to the top, or can it be an icon?
Well, we've asked about an icon. They didn't have an icon for us, so we tried to develop up some language just to, and several of the counties have it, and but certainly we can either try to find us an icon, or either we can move it to a different part of the page. We're open to suggestion. So when you click Comper, it's relatively very easy to use. So if we have a place here for us to put an address, I'm going to take one of the subdivisions that's been fairly new and fairly active, and I'm going to put in an address, 132 Lexington. So that address will come up over here to the left, and then if you click on that, I apologize, the internet is slow. When I clicked on the address of the 132 Lexington, which you can see here, that is our subject. So we're basically saying, this is a property, it's either my property or this is a subject that we want to look at. Now you can click on it and it will open up information about that property. And then you can slide down. The ratio on this is a little bit small, it's, is it adjustable, the ratio? A little bit smaller, the other way, other way, the other way, keep going. Okay, right there. This, it's gonna show up more like this, where the map shows up fairly large. The information about that one property that's the subject that you clicked on is right here. So you can go down and get information about the property, square footage, year built. You can get information as to sales price, sale date, and the total value that they have on the property. So that information is on the left. If you'll look here on the map, the subject is red. So that is the top left property, that is the subject, that's the one we're actually looking at. So if I come over here to the left, I can click on any of those also and get that same information as I did on the other one. One other thing I'm gonna show you real quick too is that map right here, you actually can do a satellite view. So you actually can get a view. I'm gonna talk with Don Kay and see if we can get a more recent photo than this, because we actually do have some photographs that were taken in the county the beginning of February. So if we were to say, we want to say, what are 3 comps that may be something that we want to look at with this particular property here? There is a means of sorting right here, so you can sort by distance, price, sale date, and size. So we'll take and just look at a couple of the properties here and just see what we can come up with. And let's see here. We just click on add a comp right there, and it'll say comparable there, and we click another one. So I'm just picking 3 randoms. So if you look at the map here, I'm gonna go back to the map view. When it actually will code or state which comp is which. So it actually has a 1, a 3, a 4, and a 5, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 for the different comps that are there. So after you pick those comps that you think that may be comparable to yours, then you can do a sales comparable sheet. And my PDF should pop up somewhere. Here's my PDF right here. So I've got a PDF that'll pop up. And with that, there's the map that we had. There's the 4 comparables that we talked about. And then very quickly, we have some information. And whether this is the best comp or not, or comps to use, I don't know. But it does, each of them have about the same square footage. It shows here 1,800 square feet. All of them are similar, built about the same time, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. And then we have the sales prices at the top, 7 of 21. That's an older sale, okay? So, and we have this total assessed value now of 310. Then we have, each of them will have sales price and other information, pertinent information about them, so.
Michael, are those assessments the ones that you distributed to everybody that you just talked about?
Yes, those assessed,
They're current.
where it says the total value at the bottom, that would be the value that we have sent to taxpayers.
So could a taxpayer take this and then send it to you as part of their appeal?
They certainly could.
Okay, that was my question.
Could you go back to the map, please?
Yes.
And I'm curious, the icons there you have in orange and green, but there are more houses in there.
Yes. Now, no, that's a good question, because that leads me to this. So let's just say that I think it's built on when you do a search for, to say the address, let's just say that's my house, and my house has 1,820 square feet. It's gonna do the math in the background of 0.75, a house is small, 25% square foot smaller, and one that's 25% bigger. So it actually does that math in the background and actually picks houses that are similar in square footage, okay? So here's another thing. There's a ribbon here at the top, and this ribbon is adjustable. So right now we have the ribbon set to 1 mile, and it says redefine or refine by. So we have it set to 1 mile, so we try to want to look in the same area for sales. The sales date, we have it set to where it's a 1.5 years, back from January 1. Then we have neighborhood, my neighborhood. So we have the county broken down into different, probably 240 different neighborhoods. So this is going to only pick the sales from that neighborhood right now. So I'm going to go through and just show you something else in just a minute. So square footage has that range from 1365 to 2275 as year built, story height, dwelling, bedrooms, baths, and acres. So what we can do with each of these, and just say that we didn't find sales in this neighborhood, or we had an issue that there's other sales, but they aren't being populated or such. The ones that aren't populated that are yellow, I did not select them as being a comp. But if I did select them, it would actually go through and change them from being yellow. It would actually change them and put a number on them with a star. So any of the icons here at the top, just say I didn't find sales in my neighborhood, I can change it to be any neighborhood. And then it's going to go out and reach out farther to try to find other sales. Now, just say I had too many sales, then I'd probably want to come back to my neighborhood, right? Or either narrow it down. So we've got that flexibility, so if you have too many, you can refine it, and you can build it to either reach out for more sales or narrow it to get fewer sales. So here we've got, it shows us we have 19 sales. Well, we don't need 19 possibly. So if we could take that margin and, narrow that down, we could use that. Also, we have a year built function to where we could change that to be specific years. Just say it was your house was built in 1980. So we probably want to change that, and we can put a range in there for that. Story height is important because we have it set right now for any, but certainly if you have a one-story house, you don't want to compare it to a two-story house because construction costs and things differ or vary. So dwelling style, we have different dwelling styles that you can pick from depending on what we're looking for, bedroom count, bath, and even acres. So you could actually take this, and if it's not working for you, you could either open up the acreage or close down the acreage to make it tighter to fit. It's a very quick on-the-fly tool because if I change anything about any of these parameters, it changes right then. So if I put in a different address, then certainly I've got to go back through and work all those parameters back out again because it resets each time you do the address change. But it's a very good tool. We only got it up and kind of going about a week after we sent notices out. So it was as new to us trying to get it in and finished because we were trying to get different things going. And but certainly we think it's a very user-friendly product for our office, but as well as the taxpayer also. So it can fit both needs.
Any other questions?
Do you have a staff person at your office for citizen to come in and sit with them to go over this?
Well, we hope that most taxpayers have a computer and can do that. Certainly the library is a function for them also. If they don't have a computer, they can go there. Now, we typically, right now, we're in the phase of getting taxpayers' appeals, and we're trying to work through that. We haven't actually had too many taxpayers come in and want us to just sit down and go through this. That would be time consuming.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if a taxpayer can build that information or build their sheet out as to, its rendition of sales they feel are comparable, they can actually bring that in and we can look at it. But the thing is, what they feel is a comparable sales sometimes actually may or may not be comparable. And, because we may either see or look at something differently than they do. And appraisals are opinions. Just as a fee appraiser may put a value on a property, we're trying to look and come up with our opinion also.
Well, I'm not advocating for the person to come in. I'm just asking if that does happen.
Well, we haven't got, in the mode we're in right now, we're not in the mode of sitting down with each taxpayer and going through Comper and building out sales and such for them. Now, will we use this when we go to working our appeals?
Yeah.
Certainly we will. we'll use it at the Board of Equalization and Review.
All right.
But at this point in time, 32,000 notices, we're getting a lot of calls, and we're just trying to work the best we can. Now, you know, we have right now probably about 400 to 450 appeals that we've received since the 17th. So I think that's not bad. We're trying to work through them as best we can, but, in a non-reappraisal year, it may be something that, you know, we would have a little bit more time to sit and work with them and kind of show them that information. But it's a very viable tool. We don't think it's just good for the reappraisal. We think that, if, you know, you can change the sale date period. We've got it set to like a year and a half, but you could look back. But the thing is, in the market we've been in, looking back any further than a year and a half is really not,
Waste of time.
is not a benefit to the taxpayer with their property tax value.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Remember, this is Commissioner Sharp's time.
You had another question. Did you have another question?
Well, I mean, I got something else I want to say, but not a question about
I'm
this.
sorry. Sound good?
Well, you-
Thank you for that presentation. I sure hope my constituents were watching.
Certainly not.
Don't worry, they'll be calling.
The second thing I have is, as some of you know, I retired with the state of North Carolina last September, and subsequently took a job with the city of Sanford, and I know we deal with issues with the city of Sanford from time to time, and I understand we may be dealing with one tonight in closed session, I don't know, but with that being said, and the upcoming budget session, I'm sure we'll have, with me working with planning and community development, I'm sure we're gonna have, work out of the buggy building, we're gonna have at least some issues with where we're working together, and on those issues, I would like to recuse myself from those, and after we go into when we go into closed session, I'll excuse myself, and I will ask the attorney, anytime you foresee a conflict, even a perception of a conflict, please let me know, so I can excuse myself from that issue. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Reeves.
They used up my time.
Commissioner
I don't get
Vorbeck.
to talk for the next 2 years.
Commissioner Vorbeck.
I only had a question for Mr. Brown again. Is there an extension to the appeal? So the appeal's 30 days, right? Is there,
So
I just had one constituent ask because he is looking at potentially getting a appraiser, and I guess they are fully booked in the area, so just trying to figure out if
So the appeals process, the informal appeal process runs from January 1st until the end of March, okay?
Okay.
We're gonna look to open and convene the Board of Equalization Review, April 1st, okay? So on the notice that we sent out, we typically try to give them 30 days to appeal. That is not stone, but the thing is, any of those appeals, we're trying to get those appeals back in so that we can get them in to look at them, review them, and then get ready for Board of Equalization and Review.
Okay.
Because when we start Board of Equalization and Review, any appeals that come in at that time frame will be an appeal to the board. It won't be an appeal to our office.
Got it.
But the thing is, there's no appeal that's gonna go to the Board of E&R that we don't look at beforehand anyway,
Okay.
okay?
So technically, sorry to interrupt, but technically by law, they don't have to do the informal appeal. The tax office doesn't. They just offer this.
Well, the thing is, it's to their benefit if they can, because, you know, we can get a good look at it, and we can probably get with them to talk. If people come back with documentation, that's the biggest thing.
Yes.
If you're coming back to us with documentation saying why it's not worth something, that's the beneficial part. If you just file an appeal and say the value's too high, you know, I don't know what we can do with that. We don't have, you know, unless we
Agreed.
just have an area, a certain neighborhood that has a lot of appeals, we would probably try to look at that.
I think people also have to realize that if you don't like the decision of the Equalization Review, you can take it to the state.
Yes, because
And
you can.
you still need a timeframe
Right,
for
if
that
they
as
appeal
well.
to us, we'll send them an informal decision, and then they can take the informal decision, or they can appeal to the board straight to them. But you don't have to appeal to the assessor's office, but you're strongly encouraged. But the only way to get to the North Carolina Property Tax Commission is through an appeal to the Board of E&R. You have to have a written decision from the board to get to the state level.
So while it's beneficial to appeal now informally
It's very
to
beneficial
the
to appeal
tax
now.
office, what matters though, in order to get any further, is when the Board of E&R convenes, there'll be a time period that they convene, and then they'll adjourn.
Adjourn, hopefully
And-
towards the end of April,
And those
So
dates.
convene open,
convene
adjourn
open.
close,
And
Yes.
those are that is when all the appeals have to be
have to be in.
in,
Okay.
or else you've missed your deadline.
Right.
Because like Michael said, in order to get to the PTC, you have to have the Board of E&R decision.
Perfect.
So,
Okay.
so any appeal, when we talk about the adjournment date, that kind of means two different things. The adjournment date, which we're looking to be towards the very end of April, that's the last date to file an appeal, but it's also kind of a date that actually changes some of the powers that the Board of Equalization Review may have also. So we're hoping that, taxpayers will appeal early, we can get them, look at them, and get that chance to, if, we need to look at some properties and need to do some heavy reviews on some of them that provide documentation, that we can actually do that and possibly settle it before it goes to the board.
Okay.
Because when it comes to the Board of Equalization Review, those will be actually set up with a time frame. We'll probably have meetings either every 5-10 minutes, probably would be in a room like this, and they would actually have to make their presentation to the board.
Okay.
And at those meetings, the meetings with the Board of Equalization Review are gonna be based on greater weight of the evidence. So just coming in then and saying it's too high, and then we come in and show information of other sales and such as that, which will, the staff would actually be preparing packets for each one of those. That's a long, tedious process, so we'd like to look at them prior to if we can.
Okay,
Yeah, 'cause
and then at last meeting, I know you had mentioned, or I think it was you, sorry, that they were looking at changing the income requirement for a married couple filing jointly. Did you
Well,
mention that?
There's
Or
There's
that's
talk
talks?
of, there's talk of legislation, and
Okay,
I'm
so
not
that would
sure,
be legislation on a local,
That would
I
be
mean,
the-
within the state, I'm sorry.
that would be with the General Assembly for them
Okay.
to do that.
All right.
We can't do that.
No,
That's-
yeah, no,
any-
I figured not. I couldn't remember what you said, and I thought it was,
Elderly, disabled, veterans, those are set by the General Assembly.
Okay.
The limits and guidelines for those.
okay, thank you.
Any other comments, Commissioner Vorbeck? You were piggybacking off on Commissioner
I
Sharp
was,
still.
I know.
Understand.
No.
Yes, sir.
Wait, now
Got a
you're
quick
taking my
question
time.
for Mr. Keel. You have any plans to do away with the gardening program they have down in that sector? Thank you, that's good enough, thank you.
I've already met with them.
Good, thank you.
Your alibi is accepted.
I'm good, no further.
Commissioner
comments. I'm
Connect.
sorry.
Commissioner comments, Commissioner Connect. Do you wish to piggyback off of Commissioner
I
Sharp's time?
think we've covered them well, thank you.
Commissioner Carver, do you wish to piggyback off of Commissioner Sharp's time?
No, I don't think so.
Comments, sir.
Did they jump over you? Did you have anything to say? Okay. I just want to revisit the issue that we did go to the NACO conference. We didn't have a chance to talk about it last time. And the reason that I think it's important is that I need everybody to kind of understand this is an important conference. It's our opportunity to talk to our legislators. It's an opportunity to rub elbows with people who make decisions that directly affect the county. And if there is one healthy thing that I think that the current administration is really doing, is they're trying to push opportunities for funding down to the county level, so we don't have to depend 100% on the state processing the money for us. And it seems that the legislator's office and their staffers are more than willing to help us grease the skids to get access to this money should we run into some problems. And our new manager asked for some additional money that might be made available to help with the Moore Center, for example. Those are just good examples where the feds might be able to come up and complement maybe what the state's doing. The other aspect of that is I just went to a Triangle J Council of Government Board meeting, and we had a chance to talk again about the effort that Triangle J is making to reach out to individual members in the Council of Government and help them with this kind of funding at a county level. And I understand that our manager, again, is working with their contacts there to make that possible for us. And what that does is it opens up an avenue of approach of somebody who could be, quote, assigned to Lee County to look for funding that might be attractive to us. You know, they're saying they're kind of our agent to look at. And then once that's done, make a determination of how much effort we might have to make in order to file for that and build a case and make an application. So it greases the skids for us to open up access to these federal funds that are particularly available through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act. Those are things where there are nuggets there. If we could get together and make those applications, we might be able to benefit. So that was really important. But overall, recently, I would just like the public to know that when we go off to something like this, they make it really easy for us to get in contact with the people who can really help us here in Lee County. And knowing those names, being able to talk to them as individuals, increases the potential that we're going to be able to take advantage of it. So I'm glad we were able to go. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Commissioner Lovick.
I'm piggyback just a little bit on the NACO conference. One thing that I really noticed was, and Manager Minner was in there and did talk about the Moore Center, but they perked up when they mentioned the Moore Center. So they very much know and are looking at their people in the county. So I was very impressed with that, and it seemed like that they would, you know, look into it to get us some money to get a top-notch facility for that. And the only other thing is, I did mention that I went to Thursday night, the El Refuge, a very good event. We had our Lee County Agriculture Extension Cooperative, they were there, the Health Department was there, and our Sheriff's Office, very well representative. Good event, but Lee County was very well represented. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Connect, if we can go into closed session.
I
sir.
don't know if you have anything. Okay.
No
I move that we go into closed session per NC General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with our attorney to preserve attorney-client privilege.
Motion been made to go into closed session according to everything he said. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now in closed session. We will take 5-minute recess for those of us Motion to adjourn? Motion's been made to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.